All right, everyone. I'm excited to introduce my next guest, one of the industry's most sought after producers of live events and unscripted programming, TV Land Awards, Hollywood Squares, Kathy Griffin's Life on the D List, and so much more. Also, one of my favorite TikTok follows. Please welcome to the show, Michael Levitt.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, so glad to have you. I enjoy your deeply honest and direct TikToks about the industry.
Thank you so much.
The one thing, as I was kind of just diving into your, it didn't occur to me that someone did the Michael Jackson.
Oh, okay, hold on. I'm sorry. Blooper. All right, hold on. Wait, let me go back to, this is Henry.
Hey, Henry.
Wait, okay. Okay, this is a blooper. Okay. You want to start again, or do you want to just pick up?
One of my favorite TikTok follows. Hey.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. And even hearing you rattle through my credits is exciting when I hear other people talk about it, because to this day, I'm so proud of so many of the shows that I've done. And it's fun to hear them all collectively rattled off. So thank you.
And I only barely scratched the surface. I mean, I could go, but we want to be able to actually talk. So we'll bring them up as we go and surprise everyone. You've done some really cool stuff with Henry Winkler. We were talking about just before the show about Motown coming to you outside Detroit. And so you did Motown Live.
I did. I produced it with the legendary Ken Ehrlich, who is known for producing the Grammys for over 30 years. And he brought me in to work with him. And that was really wonderful experience, because Ken was known for his collaboration. So every episode was pairing modern and classic entertainers. So, from the Four Tops to the Temptations to the Commodores. And then we had the Brandies of the world. I even had Britney Spears, and it might have been her second television performance ever, perform on Motown Live, which was kind of odd, but we knew she was going to be really hot and she was blowing up. So yeah, that was one of her very first appearances.
Oh, that is really cool.
And also, we shot Motown Live at Renmark Studios, which was one of the original Desilu studios. And I happened to actually work in the bungalows that Lucy and Desi worked in. So that was also very cool.
All right, some good vibes then coming for the show.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, man. Well, you did some cool stuff then, I guess, after with Britney Spears too, right? Didn't you do some Mickey Mouse Club stuff and then do a couple of Britney Spears specials?
Yeah, I was the talent producer on a version of the Mickey Mouse Club. It was the era of Britney and Christina and Justin Timberlake. I actually did that from Los Angeles, and they filmed that in Orlando. So I didn't have much interaction with them. But it wasn't until Britney released her first album that I got to know her and started putting her on many of my shows, from Teen Choice Awards to the Billboard Awards and so on. And what happened was the record label had said to me, Michael, do you think you could get a TV special for Britney, because they had tried and had been unsuccessful. And Baby One More Time was huge at that point. And I knew that we had her coming up on the Billboard Awards, and she was winning 16 awards, including Album of the Year, Artist of the Year, Song of the Year. And I thought that would be a really great time to pitch the executives at Fox, where the Billboard Awards aired. And so I set a meeting with the Fox executives the morning after Billboard, knowing we would all be on a Britney high. And I just had this vision in my head that it would be great to pitch a special with her doing a concert on the beach in Hawaii, because come on, her in a bathing suit with that flower in her hair and that $1 million smile, I knew would really be effective. And sure enough, we pitched the show to the executives. They bought it on the spot, and I produced Britney's first ever television special, Britney in Hawaii. It was such a success, they asked me to do a second one, and we did Britney, There's No Place Like Home, which we shot in Louisiana and shot her concert at the Superdome in New Orleans. So that was great as well.
That is awesome. Did you have any other? Well, you said you weren't in Orlando, so you didn't get to hang with Justin Timberlake or Christina.
No, but again, I worked with all of them in that Britney, Christina boy band era. And I had a show called Summer Music Mania, again, Billboard, Teen Choice. So I was working with them 3 or 4 times a year for several years at that point. And believe me, those were great times because all those artists were very TV friendly. I feel that I was an important small part of their success by giving them so much exposure. And actually, Britney's management at the time also managed NSYNC. So I got to produce an NSYNC Christmas special, which was called NSYNC, the Intimate Holiday Special. And the intimate had the apostrophe N like NSYNC. So we did that in Orlando as well.
It seemed like they were going to get back together for a second there when.
Yeah, I feel bad for the guys because we know that Justin is the holdout. And meanwhile, you're seeing Backstreet Boys and you're seeing New Kids on the Block and all these other boy bands, 98 Degrees, Boyz II Men. They've all been touring for several years, making, I'm sure, a shitload of money. And these 4 NSYNC guys just haven't been able to do it because Justin is, I guess, a cock blocker, as they say.
I met Joey Fatone at a Comic-Con, and then he was supposed to be in & Juliet when I saw that on Broadway. That was his off night.
He's really nice. I like him a lot.
He seems like a good guy.
Yeah.
So you're early then. You can take some credit for some of that early Britney Spears success. So what can we do? We need to get her a new special now. There needs to be a huge comeback. She said,
yeah, I think she's got to take care of a lot of other things first. Of course, that makes me sad because my experience with her was nothing but wonderful. She was always very nice and very polite, very gracious, had that Southern charm. So I'm definitely team Britney and rooting for her to sort through whatever her demons are and live a happy life. I think she deserves it.
Agreed, 100%. That Mickey Mouse Club, though, there was a lot of talent that came out of that year because wasn't Ryan, one of the Ryans was on there.
Ryan Gosling was on there. Kerry Russell was on there. I know Jessica Simpson almost got picked, but she was not a Mouseketeer. But yeah, they were plucking them out of that Disney World, which, they went on to do that years after with Miley Cyrus and Selena Gomez. I mean, Disney is obviously a wonderful breeding ground to launch pop artists. And I think they do a good job of identifying talented kids.
Yeah, that was a huge core right there. Just to come out of that. Speaking of Motown, Michael Jackson, it didn't occur, you watch a memorial and it doesn't occur to me. Yeah, I guess like all these things, which I guess is when we can dive into what a producer does. But like that, I was like, oh, it didn't occur to me somebody did this.
Yeah.
Just died and we were watching, a service, you know what I mean? So you put together the Michael Jackson Memorial. This is, you were
huge. Yeah. I was a part of it. I have to, again, bring up my mentor, the legendary Ken Ehrlich, who I worked for many years, learned so much about producing from just an icon in the business. Ken actually called me 3 days, 48 hours, 72 hours after Michael Jackson passed. And I saw his name pop up on my phone and I knew why he was calling. And sure enough, the Jacksons had reached out to him and Ken said, Michael, can you help me? So 2 hours later, I was down at the Staples Center in a office boardroom with the Jackson family and Kenny Ortega, another legendary Kenny Ortega, known for his choreography of many incredible movies, Dirty Dancing, Footloose, so many, plus famous director, Hocus Pocus, among many. High School Musical, Descendants, I could go on and on. But I was in a boardroom with Ken Ehrlich, Kenny Ortega, and the Jackson family, literally talking about what the memorial would be. And we were really, literally scratching notes on like napkins in a boardroom talking about it. And we pulled it together in 4 days. But yeah, you're right. It was a memorial service, but it was also a big production. We actually were recognized by the NAACP Image Awards for it. And at the time there was a question like, should a memorial be considered for an award? And they decided to honor us and recognize it because it was a massive production. We had a rehearsal, we had teleprompter, we had a script. It was a major show. So I think they were right in doing that. But of course, it was just a wonderful way to recognize Michael Jackson and celebrate his incredible life.
Yeah. When someone like Michael Jackson passes away, that unexpected and that young, you need something like that.
And I don't know if you remember, but Farrah Fawcett sadly passed away that same morning. And I'm a huge, huge Charlie's Angel and Farrah Fawcett fan. And of course, I feel a little badly when someone dies on a day that someone like Michael Jackson passes, because I think they're eclipsed by that. And I don't really think she got sort of the recognition and acknowledgement she rightfully deserved.
Oh, 100%. I was going to, every time Michael Jackson dies, I'm like, it's also Farrah Fawcett. I remember thinking to myself, oh, well, at least Farrah Fawcett got like a 7-hour head start because, or whatever it was, before they announced that Michael had died. And like,
yeah,
but it's like that with anytime somebody dies, it's like, you don't want to die. Like when somebody else, a famous person dies, you don't want to be out.
Well, too soon and sad as can be, but even Tony Geary dying the same day as the Rob Reiner story, he was just a mention in places, and General Hospital and Luke and Laura, that was huge, so anyway.
No, you're right. That's a great example actually, because Laura was like a classic moment in television, and Rob Reiner didn't just die, it was over, just over the top tragic, and then maybe got out first and all.
Well, that's why the in memoriams are wonderful, and we hope that award show producers work on getting it right every year, because there's always people left out and fans getting pissed off. And to me, it's not that difficult. I think if you need an extra 30 seconds to recognize anyone that was meaningful, you should put them in the in memoriam,
I agree. I saw your TikTok on that. I had a note to bring it up because that bothers me every time.
Yeah.
And the thing that bothers me lately, because I remember they'd always play a song, but lately it seems like there's somebody singing a song. Maybe.
Right. And then they're cutting away to the artist because they have to. And then you're not really fairly honoring the people that passed. It's tough. Yeah. It might be cleaner not to have that live artist and just have a beautiful song and really have those beautiful close-ups and include as many people as you can. On the recent, I think it was Emmys, one of the big award shows, like they left out like Dee from What's Happening. They left out Polly Holiday from Alice. There were so many iconic, classic celebrities that have been left out, and it's just wrong.
You sit there and to me, I get that they're big name artists, but that should be the one time. If I accept that gig, they'll maybe start on me, but when they go, it's just about my voice and bringing the vibe to this memoriam. Right. It's like, it shouldn't be about then cutting back. When you get so frustrated when you talk about like the people you just mentioned, and it's like, well, they didn't have to do 10 seconds back of them singing. I mean, it's like, this isn't supposed to be a performance by them.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's disrespectful.
It always just drives me crazy. You think by this point they would be like, all right, it's a month out. Everyone's admit who you're expecting to see. I mean, there's got to be ways to like just, know who the general vibe of people are looking for.
Not only that, I've had people post when I talked about it on TikTok, changes can be made very close to the show happening. So they should really do like a last look and a last review at least the day before to make sure that they've included anyone that has died in the day or two prior to the show. It's not that hard to do.
Right. Or just have someone whose job it is.
Yeah.
Every day, at the end of the day, write down who died. Right. Because I mean, they come up with people who, every right to be there, but I would have no idea who they are. I mean, I don't personally, like some writer from this or that, that has, some OG classics that they go deep. So to forget the people that are going to be clearly, and then you can think like, oh, okay, well, the first time they make that mistake, they make every.
So I think what you're getting at, Jeff, because I've had a few personal family and friends pass away, and I've been very involved in putting their memorials together. And then I have the Michael Jackson memorial, and now my comments on the in memoriams. I think what you're getting at is if the producing thing doesn't work out for me, maybe I should get in the funeral business and produce funerals and in memoriams. What do you think of that?
I think you and the Kens and to get together, I'd probably rock it right out. Yeah.
I bet it would be a very successful business.
It probably would. So how do you, when you're doing a Michael Jackson memorial, in the vein of the person singing this memorial at the Emmys or whatever needs their close-ups, how do you balance, who is there, like the list, Smokey, Lionel Richie, Stevie Wonder, like how do you start to balance? Because now you got like a list of A-listers, right? Like, just how do you just get everyone in line and still make the Jacksons feel like they're a part of, like an important part of it too?
Well, first of all, we worked so closely with the family, so we were following their lead every step of the way, finding out who was most meaningful to them and who that hit list was of people that they wanted us to reach out to. It was pretty simple. You reverse engineer, as people start to confirm and say they want to participate. We have that big, Gary Shandling rundown board on the wall with all the colored cards, and figure out who's going to go where and who's going to sing what and how we're going to create good balance in the memorial, just like we do with any show. What is that opening moment going to be? Who's the first speaker? What's the moment in the middle? How are we going to end it? In the case of the Michael Jackson Memorial, we were flying by the seat of our pants. And I think like a day before, we were advised by the family that they were actually bringing Michael's body to, I don't know if it was Forest Lawn or the mortuary prior to coming to Staples for the public service. And that was kind of a curveball. And so we, like the rest of the world, were watching on the television the police procession bringing the body from Glendale, up the 134 freeway, cutting through the pass and getting the body to Staples. And I think we were supposed to start at 9 a.m. And, there was live coverage going around the world. Katie Couric, every news anchor was outside of Staples, and they just had to sort of improvise as we did because we were just waiting for the body to arrive. Ultimately, they got there, but it was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. It really tested our production, our live event production skills.
Always a showman, had to make an entrance.
Even in death.
What they say, like 3 billion people watch this. I mean, it's
Yes.
that's unbelievable.
Yes. I'm very honored, obviously, that I got to be a part of something so historical and memorable.
Well, speaking of Kenny Ortega and Hocus Pocus, would you guys do the 25th anniversary bash together then?
We did. Freeform has a big yearly campaign, 31 Nights of Halloween, and Hocus Pocus is, their biggest thing every year. And the 25th anniversary was happening. And the network thought of me to pair with Kenny Ortega, who directed the original movie, as many people know. And so they had us meet and see if it was a good match. And it was. And I worked very closely with Kenny Ortega. Such an honor, followed his lead every step of the way, felt like I was a facilitator to take his vision to life. He was very collaborative and wonderful to work with. And obviously it was a joyous experience versus Michael Jackson, where Kenny was, still in shock and devastated because he was prepping Michael Jackson's tour when Michael passed. So that was not a great time for Kenny, and my heart broke for him. But for Hocus Pocus, it was just a wonderful celebratory thing. One of the cool things about that special was initially we had planned to stage the special in front of the El Capitan Theater in Hollywood, to erect a stage on Hollywood Boulevard and have that cool marquee in the background where they show Hocus Pocus every year. Also, many of you will know that's where the Jimmy Kimmel Show emanates from. And we were pretty far down the path of planning it. But then when we got into the weeds with Disney, they advised that if we really wanted to shoot outside on Hollywood Boulevard, we would have to put up barricades and tents and block views for safety reasons because there were so many tall buildings around. And they just had a lot of concerns and requirements, and it just became not feasible. So we had to pivot in a very short amount of time. And so I don't know why or how this came to my mind, but I just thought of the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. And I knew that that every summer they do, I think it's called Cinespia, where they project a movie against the mausoleum and they have a lawn where the crowds come. So I pitched the idea and we went and looked at it, and we ended up doing Hocus Pocus 25th anniversary from Hollywood Forever Cemetery. And it was insane. It couldn't have been a better location. And it just really set the mood and the tone for the special. And I think it was the highest rated special ever on Freeform, and, a big success and a lot of fun to work on.
It's really cool because Hocus Pocus, finally gets that sequel. And then I think I read that they might even be making a third one.
Yeah. So at the time, here's a little insight. we ended up, Kathy and Jimmy agreed to participate. And then Sarah Jessica Parker wasn't physically available, but agreed to do an interview for us that we could use in the special. But we were having trouble getting Bet to say yes. And it wasn't because she didn't love Hocus Pocus. I think it was because, honestly, she was pissed off that Disney hadn't picked up a sequel. They had wanted that for years. And even at the time of our anniversary special, they hadn't agreed to. Ultimately, Bet did participate, which we were grateful for because it wouldn't have been the same without her. But I actually believe, Jeff, that it was the success of our special that really pushed it over the edge for the Disney executives to go, you know what? We should be making a sequel. And that happened shortly thereafter.
Look at you with the scorecard so far. Hocus Pocus 2, Britney Spears. When you just...
I'm grateful. I don't take it for granted. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I forgot that you're right, though. Kenny Ortega did the This Is It or whatever, the Michael Jackson movie where Michael Jackson, about that final concert that he was staging together. He was the director of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are the lessons from Ken Ehrlich? What does a producer do for those of us that aren't exactly sure? I think directors get all the hoopla. What is the backbone here? What's the producer do?
Great question. People see producer credits on TV and film, and they're somewhat ambiguous and confusing, even to me. I think that they mean different things sometimes in film versus television. But ultimately, an executive producer is at the top of the pyramid, and they are either the one that sold the show, that got funding for the show, brought the talent aboard. For good reason, they're getting that top credit. But also, an executive producer can be hands-on as well, such as the case with Ken Ehrlich or even myself. And then you get into just the clean producer credit. And that's usually a number 2 producer that's working for the executive producer and helping to facilitate. You may have also heard the term a showrunner. Showrunners often get executive producer credits or producer credits. They're the ones doing the heavy lifting, the day-to-day. But again, when I do a one-off special, I am also the showrunner. I'm the executive producer and the showrunner. When I produce a series, I have a showrunner because I'm running a business and a production company, and it's a lot. So you've got that. And then you have other titles like co-producers, which might be like the number 3 person. A supervising producer also could be known as a line producer or an exec in charge of production. They typically deal with the nuts and bolts. They deal with the budget, the crew, the unions, the guilds, the schedule, making sure we're starting on time and wrapping on time. So those are typically line producers, supervising producers, exec in charge of productions. And that's kind of how it works. In my case, I'm a creative, or I like to think that I am. So I'm often coming up with the concept or the idea. I'm developing it, I'm formatting it, and then I'm hopefully selling it. Now, in the case of Hocus Pocus, that was Disney calling me and asking me to come aboard and bring this idea to life. So they say, we want to do the 25th anniversary of Hocus Pocus. What is it? How do you see it? And that's what Kenny and I did together, was lay out what that show could look like.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You're the real hero. You're the hero. How did you get into all this?
Well, I always say I was a latchkey kid in the late 70s on my parents' couch watching television all day long. I used to get in trouble from my mom and dad because they said I wasn't being productive and that I was watching too much TV. So you can imagine the joy I had when I made it as a producer to throw it back in their face and say, see, that was all research, Mom and Dad. But it did. It was what inspired me and excited me. I remember watching the arrivals of the Oscars and thinking it was so glamorous. And so I always knew that I wanted to be involved in entertainment. And when I was in junior high school, I was the student body president. And I was in the office one day, and the secretary at the time, which I know is a dated term, but that's what they called them back then, she said, she answered the phone and said, Facts of Life taping? I don't know. Talk to our student body president. So I got on the phone and I'm like, what? You want to send a bus and have us go to see the Facts of Life? And I was so excited. So this woman had this company where she procured audiences to attend TV tapings, and she called my school, and I got the honors club together, and they sent a bus and we went to Hollywood. I grew up in Orange County, so it was about an hour away. And I was just enamored by it. I loved it. And so then I said, what can we do next? Laverne and Shirley, and got another club at school. And we went and saw a taping of Laverne and Shirley. This was in the latter years of that show. But I just loved it. And my wonderful father said to me, he said, Michael, why don't you ask this lady if she'll pay you if you can get other groups? And I said, oh, and I asked her, she said, of course, I will give you $50 for every group you can find. And so I was in the 9th grade at this point, on the phone, maybe 1 or 2 hours a week. And I was making $150, $200 a week, getting church groups and temples and senior assisted living. And they would send buses and go to the TV tapings. As a result of that relationship, I got hired to be a page or a gopher or a low-level production assistant for all the Norman Lear shows at the time. And so my parents, who were really supportive, my mom would let me take her car. I took 0 period in high school, which meant I got out at 12 noon. And on Tuesdays and Fridays, I would drive to LA and I would work on shows like Silver Spoons, the Jeffersons, One Day at a Time, all these incredible shows as a page. And I was like 15 or 16. That's how it all started for me.
That is so cool. That is like, and $150 back then. That's like $1 million now. That is pretty.
It was huge, and my friends couldn't understand what was happening. But the second part of that story is, as a result of me working on all these sitcoms, there was a writer who was also working on the Emmy Awards that year, and she brought me in again to be a low-level production assistant, and they asked me to look after Joan Collins that year. And it was at the height of Dynasty, and they're like, good luck, kid. And she came to rehearsal and we hit it off. She was so nice to me. And during the actual live broadcast, I didn't know better. And I ran down the aisle in the middle of the show and I knelt down and I whispered, Miss Collins, are you okay? Do you need anything? And she turned to me and she said, could you get me, could you strum up a hot ham and cheese sandwich for me? And I said, hot ham and cheese? I'm on it. And I run up the aisle into the lobby, and then I'm thinking, where am I going to get a hot ham and cheese sandwich? And so I went into the press room, and they had a buffet. I don't think they had hot ham and cheese, but I cobbled together like a turkey and cheese sandwich or roast beef, wrapped it in foil, again, back down the aisle during the live show, which is a no-no. It's hot, and, excuse me, Mr. Forsythe, excuse me, Miss Evans, hi, Miss Collins, here's your sandwich. And the producers thought it was hilarious. They loved my gusto and that I took the initiative. And then they started hiring me on all these award shows. And I got in that award show circuit and then sort of worked my way up from there.
That is a hilarious story. I had a note that when you were 14, you got Harvey Korman to come to your school.
Great research. So that's when I was the student body president. And my platform that year was that I called it Operation Awareness. And I said, in 3 or 4 short years, we're going to be adults in the real world. And I'm proposing a series of guest speakers to come share their insight and give us advice on how to be successful. I won. And so I was delivering on my platform. And so I got an FBI agent to come. I got a NASA astronaut to come, a California Angels baseball player. And then I did have a connection to Harvey Korman. My mother knew his sister back in the day. So I was able to get a letter to him, but he agreed. And he showed up and spoke. And let me tell you, the goodwill I had in school after that, I think I coasted through my 9th grade year because even the faculty was so impressed by that I was sort of royalty at that point.
When I read that, I was like, oh, this is Marsha Brady, Davy Jones vibes.
Holy.
That is so cool. Okay, well, speaking of Joan Collins and Dynasty, that's a good pivot to your work with Henry Winkler and your TV reunion specials.
My tenure with Henry actually started with us producing Hollywood Squares. We were represented by the same agency, and King World, the distributor of Hollywood Squares at the time, knew that they were not going to renew the contract of Whoopi Goldberg at the time, as well as the production company that she was working with. Great producers, by the way, and Whoopi's wonderful, but I think it just ran its course, and they knew that they were going to make a change. So they were interested in having Henry come aboard as sort of that celebrity face and hands-on producer, of course, but someone that could go and shake hands of affiliates and sort of fill that whoopee slot. And then they were thinking of me to sort of be that producer in the trenches to work side by side with Henry to bring the show to life and give it a new take and a fresh look. And they had Henry and I do a phone call. I remember I was on a cruise in the Caribbean, and I actually had to call him from a payphone in like St. Martin. I couldn't believe I was talking to the Fonz. Of course, he couldn't have been nicer, more gracious, more supportive, just the nicest man ever. When I got back to LA, we got together. It was a match made in Hollywood heaven. And we ended up taking over Hollywood Squares for 2 seasons. Those were the years where we chose not to have a permanent center square. We decided to rotate the center square. So we had Alec Baldwin, we had Dame Edna as a center square, we had Burt Reynolds, we did Blondes Have More Fun Week with Pamela Anderson in the center, but we also had Ellen DeGeneres for 8 or 9 weeks. This was after she came out, after her sitcom was over, and it was sort of a lot of questions of if Hollywood and the public was still going to embrace her. And our pitch to Ellen was, look, Hollywood Squares is middle America. You're thinking of trying to do a talk show. Why not do several weeks of being our center square to ingratiate yourself with the public and develop that relationship? And it was that angle that made Ellen and her management say, I think that's a good idea. So we had her for, I think, 9 weeks, and it was great. But anyway, as a result of working with Henry, the 30th anniversary of Happy Days was coming up. So he and I produced that for ABC. We then went on to produce a Dynasty reunion with Charlene Tilton, who brought us that idea. Love Charlene, wonderful, kind lady. And then that led to Knots Landing reunion and then Dynasty.
That's amazing. I mean, because Dallas, Dynasty, Knots Landing, those were all like the shows my parents watched.
Yeah.
Yeah. Happy Days, I'm a huge fan of. I got to talk to
Fred Fox, you did. I saw.
I just saw Fred Fox.
Yeah, he's great.
Fred Fox and Brian Levant together. They wrote an amazing book on the 50 years of Happy Days. And then Anson Williams and Maureen, Marion Ross, and Potsy.
Anson
Williams. Thank you. Yeah. Anson Williams. And
come on, don't be a Potsy. Remember the name. Just kidding.
And then like Linda Pearl, who was on for a season. And like, I love doing that. My closest to like cast thing, which it was, I just recently, I talked to Vicky Stubing, Isaac, and Gopher. Fred,
a little love boat
going on. Ted at one time. That was
yeah. Well, you'll relate to this. The joy of doing reunions and doing the TV Land Awards is that, for a couple days, I get to step back in time and relive those memories with those casts. And it's really, really magical. Putting reunions together, though, is challenging because I actually put my high school reunion together, and there's a lot of similarities and overlap with television reunions because, as with a high school reunion, some people want to revisit their past and some don't. So it takes a special kind of skill set to make these people feel comfortable enough to want to show up and participate. And we were very successful at it. The Happy Days reunion, aside from the Oscars and the Super Bowl and other sporting events, was the highest rated reunion that year on ABC. I want to say 23 million people tuned in. And so that was exciting. Although I had some not so exciting things happen when after we had done the Dallas reunion, we then went on to do Knots Landing. And as part of the promotion, CBS had me do a panel with Michelle Lee, Donna Mills, and Joan Van Ark for the television critics at their big annual convention at the Beverly Hilton. And I was so excited to be up on the dais with these wonderful ladies talking about our Knots Landing reunion. And this reporter raises his hand and says, this question is for Michael Levitt. And I said, yes. And he said, if I'm not mistaken, aren't you the same producer that did that terrible, terrible Dallas reunion a year ago? And it was like, I felt like I was in slow motion. I just went. But it was one of those times where, when you wish you had the answer in the moment, Well, I had the answer in the moment. And I said, well, I appreciate that's your perspective. But the truth is, we don't make these reunions for the critics. We make them for the fans. So if you thought it was cheesy or corny, that's on you. But I can tell you that the fans love the Dallas reunion. They love seeing Larry Hagman landing at South Fork in a helicopter, and the rest of the cast pulling up in these old Cadillacs with bull horns on the hood and them hugging and embracing. I mean, it's that schmaltz and gooiness that people live for. So I stand by that. And the entire audience gave me like a huge round of applause. So it was like,
yeah. That's great. So it is like, it is hard, right? Because you got to balance everyone's affinity with the past, the cast. And like you said, do you know who William Keck?
Yes, he's a dear friend.
Okay, so I've had him on the show a couple of times, and we talked about his book, but then he came back and we talked about the reunions, and he was talking about some of, like, I think he mentioned like the soap one got him in trouble because everyone was so old. It was like, but like, like Tina Louise, we talked about, like, doesn't like to talk about Gilligan's Island at all. I realized that when I talk to people on the podcast, some people have like a memory like you wouldn't believe. I could say, and it was 50 years ago, and they can tell me like it was yesterday.
Right.
And some people are like, dude, that was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
As a fan, you watch it. They probably haven't watched it in forever. And it's new to me, or, it's always new to me because I'm always reliving it. And it's not the same experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've seen segments on talk shows where they put the celebrity against a fan to see who knows more. And it's often the fan that remembers more. And it's like, it makes sense because you think, like, do I remember every moment in my early years of working or high school, and so to us, it's so familiar, but to them, it was a moment in time. But it's not that hard because that's just really what producers do. You kind of work around it and you help fill in the gaps. And I also think my approach to all of these reunion specials is I don't care what the critics think. I'm looking at it through the lens of a passionate fan. And that's why I think the ones that I've done are so good and I'm so proud of them.
Speaking of Larry Hagman, as a fan, it always broke my heart that he didn't come back for the I Dream of Jeannie reunion movies.
Yeah, I don't know what that was about, but I know that the many times I had him on my shows for Dallas, he was great to work with. And I don't know if you saw one of my TikToks. One year we had a campaign on TV Land, which was to promote the award show, which was like TV's biggest stars are also TV's biggest fans. And so we made these promos where you see Pamela Anderson in purple and pink kind of silky outfit, and you see her bringing a TV dinner to a bed in slow motion. And as she sets it down, the reveal is Barbara Eden as Jeannie in bed. So it's like an homage promo. And then the other one we did was Damon Wayans is ironing, going like this, and he's ironing boxer shorts. And then he holds the boxer shorts up and we pan over and he hands them to Sherman Hemsley, who's in like suspenders, he was ironing pants and Sherman was in his boxers. But the reveal was Sherman Hemsley. So they were very cute. But the reason I brought that up was we did one. Larry Hagman is in it, but the person who was shining his shoes was Donald Trump. And we shot that at Trump Tower. So we start with Donald Trump on his knees, shining shoes, and then we pan up and it's Larry Hagman with his cowboy hat on. It was great.
I would like to see that. That would be something I want to dive into.
On my TikTok, yeah.
You mentioned, we mentioned Farrah Fawcett earlier and your love of Charlie's Angels. And you mentioned on one of your TikToks, that's one of the reunions you couldn't get to happen because of Kate Jackson.
Absolutely. And it just killed me because that's the one reunion I would love to do. I'm such a huge fan. Love that show since I was a little kid. Still love that show. Still appreciate the camp and the fun and what it was just a wild ride. And I loved all the angels and all of that. Anyway, Henry and I went to ABC. They said, of course, we would love it. Make it happen. Henry reached out to Farrah Fawcett. She said yes. Jacqueline Smith, who's lovely, said yes. But when we got to Kate Jackson, she said no. Kate wanted a at least $1 million paycheck, which is just not realistic. The math didn't math, as they say. I know subsequently the Friends cast got millions for doing their reunion, which was on HBO Max, but this was in the early 2000s and there just wasn't that kind of money and it just wasn't realistic. The sad part, obviously, is that Farrah died a handful of years later and we never got to do it. So it breaks my heart. Kate's got to do what Kate's got to do. I did meet her and work with her once. She was very nice, but I don't really know her, but I think Kate can get in her own way. And I think it was a missed opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. That would have been a great reunion. Would you have then also tried to get some of the other subsequent angels as well?
Of course I would have, but I don't know if we had been lucky enough to get Kate. I don't know if she would have sort of put the kibosh on that. But yes, I feel like they all had their rightful place to be a part of that reunion. And, maybe the first three were the focal point. But then again, Cheryl Ladd was on more episodes than Kate Jackson ultimately. Even though she's not considered an original angel, she still was longevity-wise number two to Jacqueline Smith. So there you go. But we did honor the show on TV Land Awards later. Again, not with Farrah or Kate, but with Jacqueline and Cheryl. And it was a lovely moment.
TV Land Awards is awesome. They don't still do that. When's the last time they did those?
No, the last time was, I want to say 2014. I have people come up to me all the time. And as you probably see on some of my TikToks where I reminisce about TV Land, people say, why can't that show still exist? Because it was such a feel-good show and there's nothing like it. And it brought people back to, a kinder, gentler time. And I would like to bring that back.
I loved that. And then Kathy Griffin, My Life on the D-List. You produced that for a couple of seasons, or season 5, I think.
Actually, just one season, but it was quite the season. So yeah, I had been a fan of Kathy's comedy for years, and I'd put her on many of my award shows, hosted the Billboard Awards. We've had so much fun together over the years. And at the time, she wanted to make a change with her production company. And she told Bravo that she wanted me to take over the show. It was a huge, huge opportunity for me because, in Hollywood, we get pigeonholed. So up until that point, I was sort of thought of as like an award show producer or a live event producer. And it was because Kathy had the power and the leverage to say to Bravo, I want Michael or I'm not doing a season 5. And so they agreed to it. And that's how I got sort of vetted and approved to produce reality shows. And we had a ball. That was the season that Kathy was thinking very seriously about trying to do a talk show. So she wanted that season of My Life on the D-List to be very celebrity centric. So every episode had a celebrity guest, and there was always a moment where she was chit-chatting with them in bed or in a limo or whatever. So, we went to Vegas to see Bette Midler, and Kathy did a cameo in her show. We went and hung out with Lily Tomlin in Vancouver. We went to Miami to hang out with Rosie O'Donnell and Gloria Estefan. We did dinner at Suzanne Summers' house. There was spent the night with Paula Deen. So many great memories. Got kicked out of the Apollo with Al Sharpton. I mean, things that had never happened in my career and will never happen moving forward. It was more fun than you could ever imagine. And Kathy and I are still dear friends to this day. Yeah, I owe her a huge debt of gratitude for opening that door for me to do reality shows.
Amazing. So many great stories. Thanks for hanging out with me and sharing all these amazing.
My pleasure. No, and thank you for doing a podcast that celebrates, classic television and so many of these shows that we all look back on so fondly.
Well, thank you for appreciating it.
Yeah.
You're awesome. Yeah. I'm trying to keep up with you.
Well, I'll keep posting, and your listeners and viewers can follow me at Michael Levitt _1 on TikTok. I like to have fun. I like to, like you said, spill the tea a little bit, share my perspective through the lens of a producer and behind the scenes.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
All right. All the best.